I'm your host with the most. My name is Dizzy, and I'm definitely going to keep you busy.
Greetings, beautiful people of the world. Welcome to another edition, another show of Sit Down Sundays with Dizzy. And today you are bringing the heat with somebody who's already had a seat on this show, a lady by the name of Maxine Clancy. Let me bring her into the room. Maxine, how are you on this absolutely glorious day? So I want to first of all thank you for
really great, thank you.
I want to thank you for taking the time to be here on this Sunday afternoon. You could have been anywhere else, but you've chosen to share it with the world for Sit Down Sundays. But before we go any further, I have to share this song with everybody because it's the epitome of what we're doing here, which is we want people to dream bigger. In fact, we want you to dream as big as you can go. Why? Because we're going to make it available. Because you're only as big as the things that you can dream and see about. So we'll see you after this beautiful song.
This is a message for everyone who is listening. Hearts and minds connecting, building a world community. This is the moment the people are coming together. Spirit of transformation, reunite in the meaning of we. What is the biggest thing that you can dream of? What can you do to make it true? Well, Transformation Day, let's make a difference. You for me and me for you. This is the moment, the signal, the klaxon, the ringing, the alarm to awaken, to ignite the passion within. Ready for changes, the spirit is stirred and shaken. Now we are primed to awaken. New chapters for us to begin. What is the biggest thing that you can dream of? What can you do to make it true? Well, Transformation Day, let's make a difference. You for me and me for you. What is the biggest thing that you can dream of? What can you do to make it true? Well, Transformation Day, let's make a difference. You for me and me for you. We can dream bigger. We open our eyes cause we forgot that we could see. We can dream better. We sing it aloud to be the best that we can be. Can be. Can be. What is the biggest thing that you can dream of? What can you do to make it true? Well, Transformation Day, let's make a difference. You for me and me for you. Transformation. What is the biggest thing that you can dream of?
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are just trying to get Maxine back into the room. But the lady who sang this song, Adela, her name is, I had the pleasure of speaking to her, and wow, what a lady. And the words that she's written in that song are absolutely phenomenal. They really encompass what World Transformation Organization is about, and it is about dreaming as big as you can be. And I'm hoping that Maxine can hear me. Can you hear me, Maxine? Yes?
I can hear you now.
Oh, I can
you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Is
Perfectly.
Is there a gap or? Oh, brilliant. Oh, I was a bit worried then. Whew. Welcome. Lovely to be here.
Well, you know what?
Nothing worse when you think the internet isn't going to work.
I know it's a first world problem we have, right? The internet.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
So listen, Maxine, thank you for being taking the time out to share some wisdom with our viewers. And you know, this month has been amazing about relationships. I had an intention to improve many relationships in my life this month. I wanted to transform stuff, and I can safely say I have transformed many relationships in my own life. Healthy relationships and unhealthy relationships. I had unhealthy relationships to food, which I've acknowledged, you know, thanks to last week. So, and this week's about, you know, if you've tried stuff with your partner or relationships and you just keep loggerheads and it's not working, well, this is an area that, you know, Maxine has got some specialty in. And being the last show of the month regarding relationships, I thought, why not bring Maxine back so we can learn how to not end, but to relieve the status with love and kindness, opposed to anything negative, and do it with love rather than anything else. So, are we on the right track there, Maxine?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, maybe it would be helpful for viewers if I just share a little bit of my own story.
Of course.
Because I think it really sort of this is how I came to this place. You know, in the past, when I was very young, I had a devastating breakup when I was 21. The man I thought I was going to marry, after traveling the world together for 18 months, he said, you know, you're amazing, you're wonderful, but I don't see a future with us. And I was devastated, heartbroken. And what I heard him say, was, you're not enough. There's something wrong with you, and I don't want to be with you. That was what I internalized. And for years, I was just heartbroken, you know, ended up getting involved in relationships that were really coming from a place where I didn't feel value, I didn't feel worthy of love. And my own sort of relationship with love was very false. Like, I thought basically there wasn't something wrong with me, I'm not enough. And therefore I would pick men that were reflecting that. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I got married. Should I have I loved that person, but it was a really not a good fit at all. And 6 months into the relationship, I actually had an affair. Felt terribly guilty, like so guilty that I worked harder and harder at trying to make the marriage work. Whereas if I'd have just admitted that it was a mistake, getting married was a mistake. Anyway, 5 years later, we got divorced, and or we separated to get divorced. And he was being really, really difficult. He didn't want the divorce, and I wanted the divorce. We didn't have children or anything like that. And he was being nasty, like very, very nasty. Didn't want to sell the house, all these different things, putting lots and lots of obstacles in the way. And at that point, it would have been really easy for me to respond with anger and as much sort of hate that he was throwing at me. It would have been so easy to do that. And I just said to myself, look, at this point, I've been with that man for 12 years. And I said, we had had a lot of good times together. You know, we'd had a lot of fun together. And despite not being a good long-term fit, and we wanted different things, He was a good man, you know, he was a good person, and I had loved him deeply at various points throughout our 12 years together. So I said to myself, I set this intention. I think this is what's really powerful, is I said, despite how he's behaving towards me, one day he will be my good friend. Like, he's my good friend, Paul, and we are friends. And I just held that intention. So every time he was being difficult, being nasty, being obstructive, you know, arguing over funds for the house, all these different things, I just held this vision, my good friend Paul. And it served me really well, because a year later I met my second husband, who was going to be my second husband. And we had a whirlwind romance, fell in love, you know him, my second husband, whirlwind romance, fell in love. Within 4 months, I found out I was pregnant, and my first husband wouldn't give me a divorce. Now, that's a good reason to be really upset and really angry and call him all sorts of things. And I just said, you know what? My good friend Paul, within, you know, X amount, a year later, I'll be able to get legally divorced, because, you know, at that point in time, you had to either be separated for 2 years before you could even file for divorce, etc. And I just carried on living my life. So I moved countries, went to live in South Africa with my new partner, had a baby. My good friend Paul still wouldn't give me my divorce. You can imagine, I phoned him up and said, look, I'm moving country. He actually moved, my good friend Paul moved to Cape Town, and I moved to Durban. So we were both living in South Africa, and he wouldn't give me my divorce. It was crazy, crazy. But I just held that intention. Do you know what? And this is the thing. It's like, who do you want to show up as? Who do you want to be? Do you want to let the divorce shape you? Or do you want to be the one who decides who you are? Because a lot of the time what happens is people get so caught up in someone else's behavior and what they're saying about them and all these different sort of things. And they buy into that. But that's not true. Whatever that person is saying about you isn't true. You get to decide who you are. You get to decide, do I want to be kind? Do I want to be compassionate? I recognize I was the psychotherapist. I was the coach. I recognize that my good friend Paul was in pain, because I was what he thought, you know, he thought he wanted to be with me. He thought he wanted our marriage. Yeah. And one of the fundamental reasons why I decided to get divorced was that he had decided that he didn't really want children. And so it was such a vital thing for me now to, you know, to have children. I was 32 at the time. And I thought, I can't compromise that in my life. So I you know, I mean, there was other factors as well. But anyway, I held this intention. My good friend Paul went on with my life, and we eventually got the divorce. I had my second child. Yeah. Got married, had my second child. By now we were divorced, etc. And I got this phone call one day from my good friend Paul, who was still living in Cape Town. And he said, I really need to come see you. And I'm like, really? Why? You know, he said, you're the only person that can help me. And I said, what do you need help with? He said, I've got relationship problems. You understand me. Can I come visit you in Durban? I was like, well, let me just check with my husband. Check with my husband. He's like, yeah, no problem. He can come. Of course he can come stay. Like, you know, I'm like, really? So anyway, my good friend Paul, who was now like recognizing that he needed my help, came to see me. I think Alan had to go to Joburg. So Alan actually left me and my good friend Paul with our children. And he was like, you understand me, you get me. Why is it I'm having the same problems that I had with you? So, you know, I helped him with that. And he really did become like my good friend. And we left off really well. And, you know, how many years later, 20 years later, I regularly, you know, in regular communication. But that held me really well when I broke up with Alan, who you know, when I found out Alan was having an affair, and we had, you know, 2 children. They were 5 and 7 at the time. I was devastated. I was really so devastated and could not believe that this was happening. This is what I thought. It's interesting, you see. I could not believe this was happening to me. Yeah, okay. Even when I say that phrase, that's what people think. This is happening to me. It's actually happening for me to evolve. And, you know, if you're from a spiritual perspective, if you believe, I don't know what beliefs people have that are listening or yourself, but I believe we you know, our soul has already chosen its lessons, that we've come here on earth. And I believe my lesson is love. I believe that's one of my fundamental soul lessons is love. Well, I think actually probably everyone's soul lesson. There's lots of other things, but you know, so when Alan said, I don't love you in the way I used to love you, all these different things. Of course, what do you think? I was hearing, oh my God, there's something. I was hearing the same thing that I was hearing when I was 21. And it was devastating. It was heartbreaking. But we sat underneath a tree in Hyde Park, and he said, you know, we'll be a different type of family. And at the time, I couldn't hear him. I really couldn't hear what he was saying. But I knew in my heart that because my children were so important to me and to us as a family, that I had to find the grace within me to treat him as if he was my good friend Alan. and it was not easy. I think I really need to say to people, because, you know, so my mentor who I've trained with, Catherine Woodward Thomas, she wrote the book Conscious Uncoupling and Calling in the One. So I'm a certified coach with her. And, you know, that's what Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin did. And I think a lot of people think, oh, that must, you know, because they did this thing. I think people presume that it's easy. It's not. It's where you literally, when you're consciously choosing that I'm going to show up loving, compassionately, kindly. Yes, I still have my anger. Yes, of course I was angry. When I found out some of the things that Alan had done, I was livid. I was beside myself. But it's learning how to use those negative emotions, what they're waking up in you. And I had to learn to set really good boundaries. I had to learn to speak up. I had to learn to speak my truth. I had to learn to honor and validate my own feelings. And they were all things that were part of my journey that I'd kind of like abandoned. And, you know, there was a part of me that was moved, you know, I went on to live in South Africa, yes, because I like adventure, but there was a part of me that had not really spoken up enough and really wanted to come back to England. And so, you know, I think this journey of, you know, if you're in a marriage or if you're in a long-term relationship and you feel that it's broken down, you have to start looking at and saying, well, where did I contribute to that? How, even if, you know, sorry. Can you see me okay? The light's gone. Yeah. Even if my partner's narcissistic, or even, I'm not saying that Alan is, but even if like my partner was abusive to me and all these things, and I have every right to leave, what was my part in it? How did I co-create that situation? How did I set myself up? And that's that journey. So, you know, the big difficult emotions that you feel, a lot of the time, we don't learn how to be with difficult emotions. We don't learn how to use the pain as a catalyst for our own transformation. And that's really what I help people to do, is so that they can navigate that relationship ending in a healthy way, so that you don't take it with you into your future relationship. Because that's often what happens. People take that, they break up badly, and they're left like me when I was 21 with all the devastation, with all those false beliefs and those false stories, and they carry that through their relationship history. And I honestly believe, you know, that in the type of world we're living in, we're going to have 2 or 3 significant relationships. Marriage isn't like it was when your parents got married, or my parents got married, or my grandparents got married. We don't need to be in relationship in the way we used to. Women can make their own money. They can choose, you know, and in the old days, women didn't really have as much choice. And I sound like, you know, the old days, you know, 100 years ago, 60 years ago, the way marriage was then was set up very differently. Society's changing, the world's changing. So you have to learn to navigate a healthy ending so that you can create a healthy future. So that's a lot of the work I do.
So, you know, you get couples that stay together for the kids.
Yes.
I mean, it sounds like a really noble thing to do, but how much justice are you doing to you? What are you teaching your kids as parents? Are you teaching them to have a relationship that's not fulfilling? Because if you're in a not fulfilling relationship, and you're staying together just for the kids. Is that something that's going to impact them when they get older? Because they're going to see that relationship.
Yes, I agree. It's a difficult one. I find it's really interesting in the work, you know, my coaching. I find often men come with that problem more so than women. No, I'm not saying that women don't have that issue. I think that a lot of men, and I think this is not spoken about enough, I think they want to be good fathers, you know, they really want to be there for their children. And when it comes to leaving a marriage, when they're really unhappy, I believe that, you know, they often stay for that reason. They think that in order for me to be a good father, I have to stay in this marriage. And of course, women have that issue as well. But they don't seem to. That's not seem to be what they present with when they come to see me. It's usually about, you know, how they abandon themselves and this, that, and the other. And so I really do believe you're doing your children a disservice to stay in a marriage where it's not working. So first of all, you've got to, you know, if you're in that situation, it's what have you done to work on the marriage? So I'm not an advocate of just leave because it's not working. But have you done some work? Don't just go and have an affair and cause like chaos. Do some work. And what is it? You know, what have you tried? What haven't you tried? A lot of issues, people have issues with communication. You know, we're not really listening. I think today in the world with so much, you know, our phones, we're more present to our phone. We have lack of presence in our relationships. And if we're not present to our partner, we're not listening. We're not hearing what they're saying. And so that communication, that there's a lot of issues around communication. Have you learned some communication skills? Have you learned how to just be with each other and respond? And have you actually looked at what are the underlying? So relationship is going to bring up our stuff, our childhood stuff, our unmet needs are going to be brought up in the relationship, and we're going to be reflecting, you know, our partner is often reflecting back to us our own inner wounds and the parts that we need to learn. So have you done any work on that before you sort of separate? And I think a lot of the time, you know, sometimes people, they don't do any work and they create this distance in the relationship, and they just feel more and more disconnected and disconnected and disconnected. And so they're looking externally for validation or for approval or for love, you know, so that's why people have affairs, or people, you know, they pour themselves into their work. And if the distance builds up and the distance builds up, and if what happens is sometimes there can be some key themes. Often it's around money, it's around parenting, all these different themes that come up in relationship. It's around our unmet needs. Maybe we've got needs that we can't even ask, or we can't be vulnerable, all these different things. So you need to really do some work around that before you leave the marriage. And if you've tried, you know.
I was going to say, what about expectations? Because sometimes, I mean, this is one thing that I wish I'd have said. I said after a business I was in, one of the guys said, look, what do you expect and what do you accept? Because say, for example, you're going to get married and you don't know what their idea of a husband is. And if you were to say before the relationship starts, what do you expect from your husband? And what do you expect him to be like? And then if you tell me this is what I expect my husband to do, I might turn around and say, listen, that ain't ever going to happen. I'm not that guy. And if you have an expectation of your partner to say, well, I expect my wife to be like this, and I wish it would have made my relationship better now. Not that we can't be, but upon hindsight, these are questions that I know sometimes, you know, once you get to know somebody, you realize what they're like, and you think, wow, when I first met you, I didn't think you were like that. And now we're married, I see what you're really like. I mean, I interviewed, I don't know if you know Savannah Steinberg from South Africa.
No, I don't.
But she mentioned something about relationships, how when you first meet somebody, you only put your good side forward, right? Just so you get accepted. And then once they get to
Yeah.
know you, and eventually you get, and they say you never used to do that. Well, no, I've always done it. If I'd have shown you that when I first met you, you wouldn't have gone out with me. So
Yeah. So that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because we do show our best side. And in fact, Tony Robbins talks about this, and he talks about it from an audio, kinesthetic, visual, like the whole VAC process, like that. When we meet someone, we love bombarding is not a good thing, but we do lots of different things. We do acts of service. We speak all the love languages when we first meet someone. And then slowly we start to, we get into a rhythm of the relationship, and we don't do all the love languages. We maybe do our love language with that other person, and the other person doesn't feel, that their needs are met, or they don't feel that the attention's there or the love's there, etc., etc. And as you say, we put that good side of ourselves forward because that's what who we believe we need to be in order to be loved.
yes.
Over the years, that changes. Yeah. And this is the thing, you start to see the whole of that person. You start to get to know the other sides of that person, the sides that they maybe hide because they believe if they are that, they won't be loved. Now, real, like, unconditional love. Let's talk about unconditional love. Are we really unconditionally loving our partners? Very likely not, because we are very likely not unconditionally loving and accepting of ourselves. And that's what I learned in my second marriage when it broke down. I thought to myself, well, was I really being unconditional love? Probably not. I had expectations. They weren't being met. Was I withdrawing love? But also, I was disconnected from like that loving myself completely. If my inner critic is being critical and judgmental of myself, I guarantee it's going to be judgmental of my partner. And so there's a reason why we don't reveal all of ourselves. And I personally, my belief is that when we get to the problems in relationship, so if we've got problems in our marriage, in our intimate partnerships, and that is when we have to get even, like, there's a new layer of intimacy that is being awakened in the relationship. And the challenge is, do we reveal ourselves? Because do we believe that our partner is going to love all of us? And most of the time, the answer will be no, because the partner doesn't love all of themselves. So the relationship is this beautiful space, sacred space, where ideally, in the ideal world, we can be all of ourselves. And we recognize that the relationship is like this space where we can, like, micro honesty in relationship is actually really important, but we're not micro honest because we're afraid of the impact.
Give me an example of micro honesty.
Yeah. So like an example of micro honesty would be actually saying to our partner the thing that we might not like about them, because it, let me try and think of something. Say, for instance, your partner does something. Let me just think.
Well, can I give you an example?
Okay. Yeah, you give me an example and I'll explain.
So there's one thing that is uncontrollable. I can't stand it. Is when someone's eating food and it's really quiet. Hearing somebody munch. I've told her. I said,
right.
Look, that is just a complete no-go. If you're doing that, I'm going to leave the room. Initially, it used to wind me up, but it's like, when you get the nails on the chalkboard, or your fork and knife on a plate. That doesn't do it for me. Yeah. But that sound, and I've said this to her, it's just, don't do it. Is that micro honesty? Okay.
Yeah, that is micro honesty. And even more honest might be, like you've said that. Now, so part of that is your challenge with that, is around that. What do you get? What meaning are you giving to it? What's it really triggering in you? There's layers of why you have a reaction to that. The second part of that is so your partner being able to hear it, knowing that actually that is about you. It's actually not about her. It's nothing to do with her. It's about you, and being able to hear that and respond to that and not take it personal. Okay. like not actually. And the reason why we're not generally not micro honest with someone is because we take things so personally. Like our ego makes up that it's just so personal to us. Why can't that person love that about me? And it's in those moments that what happens when we're not honest about things is we create distance between us as opposed to building closeness. And we're losing the opportunity there to evolve. So I would say to you, like if you were working with me, I'd like do some work around that sound and what it's really bringing up for you, because I bet you somewhere in your brain there is a engram. There's like a tiny command that happened at some point when that sound or similar sound was going on in your life somewhere. Like I guarantee you there'll be something around that. I mean, you could clear that.
It's strange because I'm not a kind of guy that gets upset by anything. I can safely say there's not many things that wind me up. I'm very, very calm in the sense that everything goes over my head, as in it doesn't bother me. What people say, what people do does not bother me. However, I need to pinpoint this noise of eating.
Yeah, it would be really interesting. But we were talking about expectations, okay, and what we expect of our partners. Now, if we have an expectation because we model marriage based on what we've observed in our own childhood, and for some people, if you grew up there's so many layers to it's quite complex actually. But if you grew up in an environment where there was a lot of arguing or shouting, and you might internalize that means that, well, if we argue and shout, that's what loving families do because that's the way they do it. It may not be nice, it may not be comfortable, but someone who's grown up in an environment where that just never happened, there was no conflict, like confrontation and conflict wasn't addressed in the home, and they see shouting as like a terrible thing to happen, and they're just like, that's their non-negotiable, do not shout at me. You've got very different experiences, very different expectations, and people will react and respond differently. Now, I grew up in a house where shouting did happen, so I don't like it, but it's something that sometimes, can happen. Obviously, I've spent years working on myself, so I don't tend to lose the plot anymore. But occasionally I might do, but I have a lot more mastery and skill set around that sort of thing. But certainly, my first husband, he just wouldn't argue. And in fact, what he used to do is because I was a lot younger then, and I did used to lose the plot quite a lot, he would just walk out of the room. Well, I felt abandoned, So it was like we had to learn how to navigate conflict in a healthier way. So that one, I wasn't screaming and shouting. Two, he wouldn't walk out of the room at any time that I was talking to him. Because eventually what would happen, even if I wasn't shouting, he just would walk out of the room because he didn't have to deal with conflict. So you can see that these are triggers for people. You have to learn how to relate. You've got to use the problems as a way of evolving. That's the idea. And very few people can do that like on their own unless they're really consciously working on it and use different, books or approaches to help them with that.
Well, I remember one relationship with a lady in London, and she used to get angry. First thing, she'd have a full-blown argument. First thing in the morning, to say the worst things ever. And in my life, I'd be looking at her thinking, how can you say such horrible things? But 5 o'clock in the evening, she's back to normal. And I was like, listen, I can't get that angry and be back to normal in the evening. If I go to that level, I'm like that for a couple of days. It's like, what is going on? But I found that what her parents did. Her parents would have an argument first thing in the morning, and by the evening, it's washed under the carpet. They've made up, and everything's fine.
So that is like her nervous system is trained for that. That's like almost like her default setting on her nervous system. And we all have, if you read about the polyvagal nerve and how our autonomic nervous system fires off, we will have comfort in chaos. Yeah. So I grew up in that sort of environment. My parents have been married for a long time, but they got married when they were very, very young. And I also had that same sort of in training, not necessarily that I had to have an argument every morning. It wasn't quite like that. But like there's a lot of comfort found in that chaos and in that disorganization. And so if you've got these set patterns where your nervous system is trained a certain way, you're looking for that in relationship, which is why people end up being in relationships that are toxic, that are actually not healthy, because they've had that modeled to them from their own family upbringing. And so part of that is learning to look at, this is why it comes back to self-love. How do I love myself? How do I honor myself? How do I attend to my feelings and what I need? All your feelings, everything that we feel is like a pathway to help us to meet what we need underneath. So underneath every feeling, there's a intent, and it's trying to give you indication of what it is that you need, whether it's rest, whether it's food, whether, it's attention, whether it's understanding, all these different things. But very often, what do? Difficult feelings, we push down, we numb with alcohol, drugs, food, internet, YouTube. Some people numb it in a healthy way, running, exercise, but they're still numbing their feeling. Some people just pour all their energy into work. And what they're doing is they're not allowing that feeling to be with them and to listen to it and say, okay, what is it that feeling is waking up in me? And when we can learn what I call it's the first key, anyone that's going through a breakup, is learning to find that emotional safety within us, like our home place within us, where we can soothe ourselves, soothe our triggers, soothe what the external input is going on around us, and learn to soothe ourselves and come back to our own center. That's the first part. When you learn to do that, then you can set boundaries, you can ask for what you need, you can make requests, all these different things. And also you recognize that people are hurt. Hurt people, unfortunately, will lash out. Hurt people will get, will say things that they don't necessarily mean. We've all been there where we've said something in the moment, we don't necessarily mean it, but it can be damaging to the relationship. So it's how do you evolve those patterns? That's really what it's about.
Okay, so would you say that the first step is to figure out where you're at, as in what is it that your partner is not happy with? Would you say, as an exercise, if there's a couple right now that have tried many things, but they're at loggerheads. In fact, I'm going to say for people that are watching, whether you're watching it live or a recording, if you haven't got a pen and paper and you're not making any notes, I suggest you do that right now, because what I'll do, I'll quickly play the video for the Transformation Academy that are teaching personal development and possibility to the children in the slums of India. We'll play that quick video, and then once we come back, get your pens and papers ready, and we'll set out some action steps for people to
absolutely
to because this is about taking action, not just talking. We're talking and walking. Yeah. So absolutely. Let me I've done something different today. I haven't got my technical guy in the background. But
you got to do it all yourself.
Doing it myself, yeah. Where are we now? Here we are.
Learning new skills and capabilities.
Well, in fact, you taught me a new word today. I'm going to come back to it after. I'm going to write it down.
Oh, okay. Okay. Go on.
Right.
This is a personal appeal to all our friends and family around the world. In April 2018, we launched World Transformation Academy right in the heart of the slum in New Delhi in India. On a regular basis, we have both the slum children and their parents being transformed with sessions of life coaching, yoga, and meditation. Regularly, up until now, we have between 500 to 600 people attending these sessions every month. The cost is approximately about £1,000 a month. Our vision is to expand this to all slums around the world.
So we've been able to do this work with the help of our generous sponsors. But what we'd like to do now is to continue and expand the work that we're doing, is to open the opportunity out to more people to get involved. So if this is something that you would like to get involved in, please connect with the World Transformation Organization, or you can make a donation, whether it's a monthly payment or a one-off payment, using our Just Giving link.
Did you know over 65 million people live in slums all over India, and 6 million of them are children? There are more rapes and suicides in slums than anywhere else in India. We want to impact these figures with your partnership. So we really need your help right now. This is a personal appeal to all of those that love making a difference. We urge you to generously contribute to our cause through the Just Giving link, and watch the 6-minute video that follows this, just to get a real feel of the difference that your money will make. This is an amazing cause. We look forward to your partnership.
I live in Kalkaji slum area, and I want to be an IPS officer because I want to stop the crimes and rapes for girls and these things. I want to change my sister's life.
17% of women experienced some form of physical violence in the past year. Individual factors related to the husband, like poor socio-economic status, consumption of alcohol, extramarital relationships. Reported cases vary from domestic violence to brutal rapes, mental harassment to sexual violence. Many more cases go unreported. A woman is raped every 20 minutes in India, National Crime Records Bureau.
I'd like to narrate a small incident that one of our volunteers narrated to me. She said that there was this young lady who had come over for her 3 introductory sessions of meditation, and on the 3rd day, when she had a one-on-one session with a trainer, she broke down completely, and she said that, last night I wanted to commit suicide because my husband is a gambler, he doesn't work, and whatever money that I get home, he takes it all and spends it all in gambling, and there's no use of my life. My life has been a struggle, and her mother-in-law was so scared and petrified that she sat beside her throughout the night, scared that she would take that extreme step. And in the morning she got up, she got dressed, and she came for her meditation session.
About 800,000 people commit suicide worldwide every year. Of these, 135,000, 17%, are residents of India, a nation with 17.5% of the world's population. Almost 6 million children live in the slums of India and has the highest rate of child sex ratio. 8.9% of the total victims of rape were girls under 14 years of age, while 16.1% were teenage girls 14 to 18 years. Over 65 million people live in the slums of India. Slum dwellers usually earn $1,900 a year. Young slum girls on their way to defecate in the open fields are abducted, raped, and at times hung from a tree, as in the case of the murder of 2 minor Dalit girls in Badon village near Delhi. Since the launch of its personal development school in the New Delhi slum, World Transformation Organization, through its regular life coaching, meditation, yoga, and motivational training, has started to transform the lives of slum children and their parents. For the first time in their lives, the slum community is being taught how to create dreams and goals, and have started their journey to realize them.
Always gives a reality check, that video, to life.
It does, yeah. Yep, absolutely.
And I think it just highlights how important self-study and self-improvement is as a given. We're lucky that we've been in this industry, and it was only last night where I was doing a meditation, and I wondered why I felt so comfortable talking to you, Maxine, and I realized that I remember after my first ever Tony Robbins, I said, this is it, this is my dream. And I came back the following, he did 2 UPWs that year. It was the only time he's ever done 2 UPWs in England. And I volunteered the second time. And it was shortly after that 9/11 happened.
Yes.
And that was a big moment for the world, right? Because I sat, while I was meditating last night, I thought to myself, I wonder why it is. And I realized because after 9/11 happened and Tony was actually doing life mastery at that time. And the actual day was emotional mastery. And I remember watching the DVD, and I watched it every single, after Robbins, the second time, I only watched Tony on my TV for 3 months. It was the only thing I watched. I watched that DVD.
Right, wow, that's amazing.
3 times a day. And everything that happened on that weekend or that day where Tony said, something really tragic has happened, but we need to take action. And I saw you and Alan there on
the video.
On the video, I could see you. And I only got to know Alan later on, but because I saw that event, and it's one of those events. There's lots of events that have happened in the world, and 9/11 is one of those moments where you can say to somebody, "Where were you when that happened?" Because what Tony explained on that day, when he brought everybody on stage and he said, "Look, everyone's going to go wherever you go anyway. If you are somebody who worries, then you're going to worry more. If security is a big issue, you're going to go there." And I think that's why our connection is so deep, because I just know you from then. And we didn't know each other then, but because of what's happening all that time. So listen, I hope everyone got
It's interesting because so I've written a book. Well, it's not complete yet, but it's almost finished. But I actually talk about finding out about my divorce, about my breakup with Alan, as my 9/11 moment. It was like embedded there in my consciousness of where I was, what happened, how it went. I could tell you everything about it. Yeah, because that's what happens when we have a significant emotional event. It's there entrained in our nervous system, all this sort of thing. So anyway, so let's give some action steps, things we can do.
Okay. So action step number 1.
So well, look, if you're going through challenges at the moment, what would be a really good idea is for you to both take some time to reflect on what are your triggers in the relationship? So what is triggering you? And what I mean by a trigger, what emotions are you feeling, and what events surrounding those emotions cause you to go into an emotional response, cause you to get upset, angry, resentful, whatever it is. And you want to look to see, before you sort of, we have a tendency to apportion blame outside of ourselves. So you want to look really honestly, with kindness and compassion for yourself and your partner. You want to take the step back and observe and say, okay, what's my responsibility here? What part am I playing in this dynamic between us? Because if you can start to do that, then what happens is you reclaim some power. You're not a victim of the circumstances. You're actually reclaiming some power and authority around yourself and the situation. And then you want to ask yourself, like honestly, between the two, what is your vision for that? What do you want to have happen in your relationship? What is it that you desire? You've got a gap between the two. And if your partner does the same and is really looking, what is the vision? What does your partner want? You can begin to see, first of all, are your visions aligned? Do you have a gap between the vision? How do you want to be in this relationship? And then you can start to look and say, okay, well, look, if I'm taking responsibility for this, what's the impact of my behavior, my actions on my partner and in the relationship? Yeah. And your partner does the same. So you're actually trying to look at it from a perspective of, okay, if I behave in this way, then there's an impact of that. What is it? What is it? Why am I behaving in this way? And what is it that I need to evolve or change within myself? Or what is it really that I'm trying to get when I behave like this? Okay. And that's like a really good exercise. It's not easy to necessarily do on your own if you've got no skills around communicating and talking and listening. But it's a starting point to help you see, well, where do I feel? Because you may both have different stories around what's even going wrong in your relationship. And then it's about beginning to, having a willingness. Not so often with couples, we just want to be right rather than be loving. We want, and the reason we want to be right is because we feel invalidated or unappreciated or unseen or unheard. And that might be very often stemming from childhood issues, where in childhood you wasn't seen, you wasn't heard, no one attended to you in the way you needed to be attended to. So that desire to be right is what's running the show. We have to let go of the desire to be right. And we need to have a willingness to be loving and to be kind and compassionate, and understanding that both of us often are triggered in our younger self when we're relating to each other in relationship. Okay. And, it's like that toddler that's going, mummy, 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 daddy, daddy, daddy. And daddy says, no, not now, I'm busy. Of course, daddy's just probably worried about money or finances or what happened to his car and and they're not attending. And in that moment, the child hears, I'm not enough, or no one's there for me. And that's often what's playing out in the relationship. We get triggered into our younger self, like unconscious. We're unconscious of it, and we move away from what I call our empowered adult self. And the idea in relationship is you want to relate from your empowered adult that's resourceful, that's resilient, that's wise, that knows that we're love anyway, But if we're relating from our disempowered younger self that feels that they're not enough, they're incomplete, there's something wrong with them, that they need to be perfect, they need to be quiet in order to get love or to be loved, and that's who keeps showing up in the relationship, then it's a distraction.
Would you say if each of you got a notebook, and the first exercise is obviously figure out where you're at, figure out what's going on, what are you feeling, both of you write it down, and then the next step is to figure out I was going to say figure out step. I was going to say is to look at your younger self and how you show up, or would you go ahead.
You might look at, okay, so if what am I making up about myself? What's my story in that? What do I believe? Like, what are my beliefs? What are my underlying assumption about my partner and about myself? Because very often our beliefs are triggered, and whatever we believe or whatever we're assuming about ourselves or our partner will get in the way of us being able to hear, being able to see and be open. And you must remember, don't take it like if you're then going to have a conversation around this, it's not personal. You want to like set up the sacred space between you by saying, we're doing this exercise to help us to evolve, to change, to shift what's going on. It's not personal. Yeah. It does obviously take some capacity to be able to hold two perspectives in place which is why working with a therapist or a coach is a good idea, because they will help you to be able to hold the space so that you can come and have these difficult conversations. But if you don't have the funds to have a therapist or a coach, then you want to really learn to just sort of observe and step back and to breathe. There's some really good books out there Maybe we could put them in the show notes, a couple of recommendations in the show
Yeah,
notes.
yeah.
But one of my favorite books is Conscious Loving by Gay Hendricks and his wife, Catherine, and I think it's Catherine Gay Hendricks. That's a brilliant book around this sort of work. There's
What
lots of
about,
exercises.
Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? Is that a good one?
Yeah, I'm not. I read all the John Gray books. I think they're a bit simple, very simple. If you've never read any books, yes, read them. They're good and helpful.
Point.
Yeah, if you've not read any personal development books, if you want to do the work on yourself, there's a brilliant book that came out this year called How to Do the Work by Dr. Nicole Pera. Absolutely brilliant book, really good, around younger journaling, work on your younger self, understanding, look, we have to take responsibility for how we're showing up in our relationships. That's the bottom line, But if you want to then do some couples work, like an exercise that I give my couples to do when I'm working with couples, is literally 5 minutes each of just letting your partner talk. You don't interrupt them. So if 5 minutes seems like too long, just start with 2 minutes. Yeah. You let them talk. You don't interrupt them. At the end of it, you paraphrase what you think, what you heard them say. And this is, it's a learning exercise.
Yes.
Because often we don't actually hear, and our partner feels unheard. And then afterwards they can say, it's not, you don't, you've got to agree not to, you're learning a new skill. You've got to have new skills. And so then they might say, okay, yeah, this is what I said, because often we can hear words, but we don't see the body expressions in the faces. And just by practicing that, if you set aside that, so you start with 2 minutes and then you build it up, where you're really stepping into your partner's world for 5 minutes and finding out, not with a view to fix it, not with a view to do anything with the information, but just to step into their world and see what it feels like to build them. That's like builds up trust, builds up relatedness, builds up connection. And there's a series of different exercises that you can do. But they're important. Yeah, what if?
What if you are completely opposite to your partner? So when you can relate, as in, if you don't have any, if you're really into personal development and your partner isn't as open, and you can see lots of possibilities, and they can't see the same possibilities as you, that's a vision that's mismatched. Or how do you relate to a person then? Because I've been in relationships where I can't relate to how they're thinking at all, because it's completely alien. That thought would never have crossed my mind.
Yeah, so that and that's okay. I think what it's about, what I'm hearing, is, if we're listening from our hearts, so really being in our bodies, not listening from our head with an opinion or a judgment or all these different things, But if we're sinking into our hearts, and you can actually do that when you're present with someone, by breathing in, slowing down your breathing, actively, maybe rubbing your heart, dropping into your heart, and imagine you're connecting with the other person's heart, you will feel what they're feeling. So you're shifting into a heart-focused conversation, as opposed to a head conversation. Yeah. And when we do that, that's the beauty. We're all individuals. We may not have the same vision. Now, if you're talking about the vision for the relationship, if the vision's so far apart and one person has I think you're, might be tapping into value systems there, where that person might really value personal development, growth. You'll see growth. I had a client that had this issue where he saw the relationship as that the relationship was a ground for always being able to improve the relationship. Now, his wife saw that, his perspective, because he was so into personal development and growth and always looking to improve. And he would ask this question, how can we improve our relationship? How, that constant question he would ask. She saw it that he found fault with her.
Wow.
And the relationship. Yeah. Where he just had this insatiable desire for growth. And it wasn't that. He was just like, he wanted to make it even better. But
oh, we lost her. Maxine, where have you gone? That was the hook. You were there 1 second ago. Now she's gone. I'm sure she'll be back in a minute. That's like a cliffhanger, wasn't it?
I lost you. Sorry.
Talk about a cliffhanger there, Maxine.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It suddenly my phone just went boom. Anyway, I'm back. So can you imagine, 5, 7, 8 years into their marriage, if he's constantly asking this question, she was starting to feel that, that there was something wrong with her and she wasn't doing it. And his desire to have the best relationship ever was actually bringing up the feeling like they didn't have a good relationship, but they do, so he had to do some work around the value system there and looking at their value system. She hadn't done any personal growth like seminars or anything for quite some time. Interestingly enough, they'd actually met through personal growth seminars, and she went and did some stuff, and it was helpful for their relationship. But he had to also look at what was it about himself that had this fear of, not growing. Yes, constantly to improve. So it's very interesting. So you want to look at your values. If someone's value system is success and you're in a marriage with someone who all they are being driven by is success and family comes quite a low down, you're going to have a problem, aren't you?
Yeah.
If your value system is around safety and security and money and assets, and you've got someone who's doesn't particularly value safety and wants lots of uncertainty and is very risk, you're gonna have issues. You're gonna have a lot of conflict in your relationship because your value systems are different. So it might be worth, and this is where your vision for your relationship, where your relationship's going, is an important conversation to have. And also, if you've been together for quite some time and you've had children, things shift and change. So the vision's not necessarily a fixed vision. The things that you think you want, particularly if they're ego-driven things, change. The more we drop into heart-based conversations, creating, I don't like to sort of think of goals. I tend to think more of choices. How do I want my life to look like? What are the choices I'm making? If my choice is to, paint more, and I don't communicate that with my partner, and my partner thinks that I'm just building an empire, which might have been what I wanted 5 years ago, but now actually I think, I want a bit more freedom, want a bit more time, I'm getting older, I want to spend more time doing art, which is what I do want to do. I don't think I've got to communicate that with my partner, haven't I? Because they might have an expectation of where I'm going, or how much money I'm going to be bringing in the next X amount of years in order to live our dream life at the end of our life. Do you understand what I'm saying? These are different things that happen.
It's almost like running a business, really, isn't it? You need to, when you're running a business, you need to have a check on things. You need to make sure that things are going according to plan. And like you said, if you've been married for 10 years, what you had visualized at the beginning has completely changed now. You've had kids or a child or whatever. And so it's good to review your parent with your partner. How are you feeling now? What's your, because I know my vision for when I got married to now are two completely different things. I mean, looking at relationships, I've read books, I've looked at things, and I came to the conclusion. I've grown up, my father's a community leader. He's a pillar of society. And throughout me growing up, he was never at home. He was never there because he was serving the community. As a result of that, my mum was my discipline. and my mum couldn't
Right.
discipline me. So I did whatever I wanted for most of my youth.
Right.
I got kicked out of my house when I was 17 because I was a naughty boy. And I got sent to London to live with my auntie as a punishment.
Oh,
But-
okay.
But when I got there, nobody knew that my dad was the president. So what actually happened is I became free at 17 to be whatever I wanted to be. Hence,
Okay.
I am who I am, doing what I'm doing the way I'm
Yes.
doing it. But when I look at the role model of the family structure that I've seen, it made it a lot easier for me to be at work whilst my wife was at home, my son. It wasn't, I didn't feel, what's the word? It didn't feel alien to do that because, like you said, it's a default setting for me. My dad had a full-time job in the council, and then after work, he was running an organization. He was the president of the Hindu Forum of Great Britain. He's the deputy lieutenant of Lancashire. He's the first Indian to become a magistrate, justice of peace.
Wow.
He's an honorary fellowship of the Central. He's got so many accolades.
Amazing.
In him as a leader. Most people look at me and they're like, mate, how are you going to do that? How are you going to fill his boots? And it was going to Tony Robbins and being around people that want to make a difference in the world. I mean, doing this show, I actually said to my dad, I said, well, you know what, Dad, I'm going to do exactly what you're doing, but I'm not going to just do it for the Gujarati community like you've done it in Preston. I'm going to do it for every human being on the planet, and there's no one that can stop me because I'm going to do what it's what I've seen what's happened. I've seen him. I've seen him as a person who speaks in front of audiences. So when I go on a microphone and I speak, people are, oh, you're such a great speaker. Well, I've had a really good role model. So I think what you're saying is great. And it's acknowledging where you've learned these things. So it's funny that next month's subject, and you're probably going to love it. So the month of August is when all the kids are at home, right? So we're doing parenting.
Oh, fantastic.
So I'm sure as a parent, you can get involved. I'm sure there's plenty of
parenting. Parenting is, another gift that teaches us unconditional love. How do we love? How do we parent? How do we set boundaries? All those things. Your parenting, like really the coaching I do is teaching people how to reparent themselves. Because you're going to have good and bad. And even as a coach and as a psychotherapist and spent 30 years in personal development, I haven't got it right completely with my kids. I have really good relationship with my kid. But you hear. I hear stuff that my parents. I hear myself sounding like my parents. All these different things, and I think it is about consciousness and awareness. And kids these days. That they're very conscious. As the consciousness of the planet shifts, then our children are more conscious, more aware. They all the different things that they're aware of. And I think, as parents, I think we naturally want to protect our children. We want them to be safe, and we fear all the things that we know about the world that we think, but I was always the good girl. I was always the good girl until I got to about 20, and then I basically went and traveled the world, and I think my parents worried about me a lot. I mean, I traveled when there was no internet. In 1988, when you had to write home, and it cost a lot of money to phone and things like this. And I went to destinations that, on a motorbike around Asia and stuff. And I think, look back and think about it now, and I think, God, I was so bold and brave and courageous.
Would you ever do it again? Would you ever be that bold again, do you think? Or do you think that was just your young, hungry nature?
Well, my partner and I, we love sailing. He's got a yacht, so we go sailing. We're sort of talking. It would be nice to do some sort of, around the world type thing. I don't know if I'm bold enough to do that, but it'd be nice to go sailing in places that we haven't been sailing. So that would be fun. But yeah, I think that's the thing about life. We have to be brave. We have to we have to be courageous, don't we? That's the part of it. And it takes some of the beliefs that have been passed on to us are not really our truth. We have to find our truth. I think bravery is about finding like what is true to us, like to me, to you, and not necessarily what's been passed to us. I'm just aware of the time, and I will actually need to go shortly.
We are coming to the end. I'm glad we did an hour, because half an hour just never was enough. The first couple of shows was just like a learning curve, but I really love what we're doing. I really thank you for coming on board, Maxine. And
my pleasure.
Sharing.
Thanks for having me.
It's serving me, and I'm living my purpose. I'm getting to share nuggets with people around the world, and for me, one of the most exciting things about being a parent, because parenting is next month's subject. As someone who's into personal development, having your own person was the most exciting part, because everything I've learned about, I acknowledge my son's first ever moment of fear and anxiety. And he was on a trampoline, and it was like, wow, this is the first time he's experiencing it in his life. And he was like, I saw his frustration for the first time, and it was such an exciting thing to have a child. So next month, I will call you after the show and figure out which episode we're going to have you on as part of parenting.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Because there's going to be different levels of parenting, and I think because it's the month of August, all the kids are home anyway, and the fact that Harinder met his partner through you, right? One of our founders.
Yes.
Because when I said I'm going to get Maxine, and he goes, "Oh, Maxine's the person that brought us together." So he's with him and Dippy, So they're going to be coming on, being parents. So
nice,
if you're a parent, you want to come on next week, because we're going to have some great stuff, because you can learn from your kids. It's not just you teaching your kids. There is more to learn from your child than you can learn from adults, because they're born free.
Absolutely.
And we don't pollute them with this stuff. So listen, Maxine, it's been a pleasure to have you on.
My pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
And I will be in touch. And thank you for sharing such intimate moments of your life with the world.
My pleasure.
We'll see you all next week. And if you are recording, if you're watching the recording, then leave us a comment. And if you have any questions for Maxine, please leave them on there. Do you have a website, Maxine? What's your website?
www.maxinclancy.com.
There you go, just like her name, maxinclancy.com. But like I said, we are going to have Maxine back, so fear not. Thank you once again, Maxine. Thank you, people.
Lots of love. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.